Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's video is going to be pretty short, but I just wanted to talk to you guys about running efficiency and looking good when we run. Because let's be honest, we all don't look the same when we run. I'm a bit of a goofy runner. It doesn't look easy. At least when I look at myself running, I don't look smooth, I don't look efficient the way someone like Eliud Kipchoge looks, even at the end of a 2-hour marathon. I mean, looking at that guy's form is like looking at poetry in motion. And we've all seen it. Right, we've all seen it. We know a good looking runner when we see one. For example, I could be driving down the road and I can see a runner running on the path. And if they have a good gait, if they have a good foot strike, I don't even know how to describe it. If they just look smooth, if they're looking like their running is effortless, your eye is just drawn to it. You can see what is attractive about that running style. And then of course, there's people like me that maybe don't pick up their feet as much. It's a little more of a shuffle. I don't look like an efficient machine moving down the road. But apparently that doesn't matter too much. So what we think of as a beautiful running stride is not always efficient. Or perhaps it's efficient, but it is just as efficient as other running strides. So we've already mentioned Eliud Kipchoge as being someone that has just a beautiful running stride. But then we've got classic examples of epic runners like Paula Radcliffe and Alberto Salazar. They were known for having kind of an awkward looking running stride. And Paula Radcliffe held the world record in the marathon distance for a long time. Like, it was just broken a couple of years ago. I think it was broken at the 2019 Chicago Marathon, actually, when I was there. Somebody fact check that for me. So guys, even though I'm saying that a good looking, attractive running stride, running style is just as efficient as one that does not look as good, that looks a little clunky. Clunky is a word I've used to describe my own running many times. I like to back it up. I like to back it up with someone that actually knows what they're talking about. So in this video, I've got a couple of studies that I want to tell you about. The first one was published back in April of 2020. And the title of this first study is a hierarchical cluster analysis to determine whether injured runners exhibit similar kinematic gait patterns. Basically, we're finding out if different running styles equate to different injuries. So this study used 3D gait analysis tools. So basically they are filming runners running on a treadmill, then they're attaching those little markers to all the points that make a difference. So the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hips. So we can see the angles of every runner as they're moving. And the purpose of the study was to find out if we could see different stride patterns throughout runners, and then in turn, if those stride patterns related to specific injuries. And the study looked at 291 runners, and about 266 of them had had a history of injuries. The average age was about 39 and a half, and it was split evenly between men and women. So this is a good representative study, right? So the computer found, because this was computer learning, we're attaching these little things and then the computer is interpreting it, which is a lot more reliable than just me looking at something and deciding, oh yeah, this person looks better. But the computer looked at 62 variables of each runner's gait. And throughout these 62 variables of 291 runners, the AI was able to put each runner into one of 5 groups. And each gait group was distinct from the others. So for example, one of the groups had knees that collapsed as they moved through their gait cycle. Another had knees and hips that bent less than usual. And another group had a very pronounced heel strike. And there were enormous changes in the angle of the ankle throughout the gait cycle. So you might intuitively think that perhaps the runners whose knees collapse as they're moving through the gait cycle, perhaps they're going to be more prone to knee-related injuries, right? It makes sense. We've all been told that runners who heel strike are increasing their impact forces. So perhaps those runners are going to see a higher prevalence of stress fractures in their lower legs. Well, it turns out that the science does not support that. In fact, the various types of injuries, along with the ratio of injured runners to non-injured runners, were absolutely random across the gait groups. That's probably not what you'd expect, right? I was surprised. Okay, the second study I want to tell you about is brand new. It came out in January of this year, January of 2022. And the title of this study is called "There is no global running pattern more economic than another at endurance running speeds." They kind of gave us the results in the title, don't you think? That's not how we do things here on YouTube. We have to tease it so you don't know what the answers are. For these researchers, they probably don't have a YouTube channel, so we'll cut them some slack this time. And guys, before I tell you about this study, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but the data is in. It's been known for a long time that certain running styles are not better than others. So it's well founded that runners that look like they're running a little clunkier doesn't always mean that they are not running as efficiently as they can. But this next study was published in the International Journal of Sports Physiology and Performance by researchers in Switzerland and New Zealand and Malaysia. And this study quantified running form in 2 ways. Now, the first way it looked at was duty factor. And the duty factor is how long your foot stays on the ground when you're running. Now, runners with a high duty factor, which means their feet are on the ground for a longer amount of time, they tend to heel strike, they tend to bend their knees a little more. They also tend to propel themselves forward rather than upward. And the next way they quantified running form is by the Volodalen scale. The Volodalen scale is a proprietary scale. I'd be surprised if anyone has actually heard about it, and I don't know if I'm actually saying Volodalen right, but that's what it looks like. So that's the way I'll keep saying. But the Volodalen scale measures how high you're getting off the ground. You might know it as vertical oscillation, and we've been able to measure vertical oscillation with a chest strap for years. But for some reason, this company that developed the Volodalen scale, they think it's proprietary, so we won't let them know that fitness companies have been measuring this metric for years. So the Volodalen scale is kind of inversely related to the duty factor. So runners with a low duty factor means they're not leaving their feet on the floor for very long. They're very quick, short, quick steps. But in that case, the Volodalen scale or factor increases. So runners with a low duty factor are propelling themselves higher off the ground. And they also tend to land more mid-foot, forefoot. So it sounds like to me that a low duty factor and a high Volodalen score is what we tend to think of as a nice running form. And so the researchers compared the duty factor, the Volodalen score, with running economy. And running economy was measured by the amount of oxygen that was consumed over a given distance. And they tested it at different speeds. They tested it at 10, 12, and 14 kilometers an hour. And get this, they found something very interesting. Well, I probably shouldn't have said it that way. What they found was nothing. And I guess sometimes nothing can be very interesting, especially if you're looking for something. But in this case, the researchers weren't actually looking for something because they hypothesized that they weren't going to find any differences. And that's exactly what they found. So actually, that's pretty interesting. So even though they spent all this money doing all this research, because their research actually met their hypothesis, it was a raging success, even though technically speaking, we didn't learn anything. Does that strike anyone as funny? All that to say this, and guys, thank you for being here. If you are still here, well, I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you've stayed to this point to actually hear about the conclusion. Because the conclusion is actually pretty good for us. What the conclusions of these two studies are telling us is that how you run is how you run. Now, there may be a time when adjusting your gait may lead to some efficiency gains, but for the most part, according to science, according to these researchers that have poured hours and hours of their time crunching the numbers, pulling in AI to look at it so we don't have human error much, we find out that however you run is okay. Just because you run a certain way that you might think is not as attractive as Eliud Kipchoge doesn't mean that you are not running very efficiently. Now let's just be clear, running efficiency doesn't really relate to pace. There are loads of back of the pack runners that run extremely efficiently. And then of course, like we've already said, you've got people like Paula Radcliffe and Alberto Salazar. They are definitely front of the pack runners. They look pretty goofy running, right? So guys, embrace it. Embrace yourself. Embrace how you run. Don't try and change yourself. How's this for a feel-good ending to this video? You are you. You are special. Yeah, you're special. You run special. Don't change. Don't change a thing. I like you just the way you are. I didn't actually plan this video. I just saw these articles and I started rabbiting on about it. I'm not actually sure if this is the direction I wanted to take it. But actually now I think about it, I am very much like the researchers in that second study. I went through all this work of putting together a video only to tell you, don't do anything. Don't change anything. Your running gait, your running style is perfect. All right guys, be kind, be happy, run well. I'll see you in a couple of days.